right now, there is a junior corporate lawyer, probably making like $150,000 a year.
At least, yeah.
Right, sitting at their, mahogany desk in some high-rise office. And they are just utterly terrified.
Oh, completely.
Because they're reading the headlines and they're watching these wild tech demos and they're having this very specific, very binary panic attack. Like, is a machine going to take my job tomorrow?
The classic robot replacement fear.
Exactly. It's this ambient anxiety humming in the background of, almost every conversation right now. In coffee shops, on professional networking sites, everyone is asking, are you obsolete? Or are you safe?
It's always a yes or no question.
Always. But so, according to the incredibly dense, highly provocative research we are diving into today, that junior lawyer is having the wrong panic attack.
Yeah, they really are.
The robot isn't going to walk in and literally take their chair. It's going to silently delete 60% of their paycheck.
And that is such a profound reframing of the anxiety. We are entirely fixated on this cinematic version of technological disruption.
A Terminator version, right?
Right, exactly. We look for a clear, sudden event, a definitive yes so we can just panic, or a clear no so we can, go back to sleep.
Oh, sure.
But the author of today's source material, it's an essay titled The Cognitive Labor Compression, not replacement but deflation. They argue that economic shifts of this magnitude rarely offer us the courtesy of a sudden cliff.
Right, it's not a cliff.
No, the real danger isn't the total elimination of your role, it's the evaporation of the economic premium attached to your skills.
And that distinction, that right there is the engine of this entire deep dive today. Because if we're asking the wrong questions, we are going to get the wrong answers about our own survival in this economy.
Absolutely.
So our mission today for this deep dive is just pure open exploration.
No neat conclusions today.
No, none at all. We are looking at this sprawling, interconnected web of corporate organizational charts, and we're going to overlay that web with plunging line graphs representing wages and headcounts.
It's a grim picture, but a necessary one.
Yeah. We are here to dismantle this text, search for better questions, and just look at this unseen, quiet restructuring from completely different, sometimes really uncomfortable angles.
Because the text doesn't offer a neat survival guide.
It really doesn't, and neither will we.
Right. And to truly explore this, we have to start by, dissecting the psychological difference between replacement and deflation. The author isolates this right in the opening paragraphs.
Let's unpack that.
So the text is explicit. Artificial intelligence is not going to take your job entirely, and it's not going to happen tomorrow.
Okay.
But it is already stripping the premium off the job for a massive swath of cognitive workers. And we have to ask, why does the public debate completely ignore this reality?
Right. Why are we so obsessed with the cliff?
Because replacement is an easily identifiable antagonist. It triggers all our historical anxieties. We think about the robotic arm replacing the assembly line worker in Detroit.
Right. It's like you have a job on Tuesday, and on Wednesday, security is literally escorting you out of the building with a cardboard box.
Exactly. That's the cliff. Deflation, on the other hand, the author compares it to a slow leak in a tire.
A slow leak.
Yeah, it is insidious because it normalizes diminished value over time. You still have your desk, you still have your title, your morning commute.
You're still badging into the building.
Right. But the economic value of what you produce over the course of that day is just bleeding out.
The market just stops valuing the output at the same rate.
Precisely.
But, if the end result is that I literally can't pay my mortgage because my wage has been compressed down to a fraction of what it was.
Which is the fear.
Right. The mechanism feels somewhat academic, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, let's look at it like this. Is it like the invention of the standardized shipping container in the 1950s?
Oh, that's an interesting parallel.
Because before the container, a local dock worker had a massive premium. Loading a ship was this complex, highly specialized, very localized labor.
You had to know exactly how to pack odd-shaped cargo.
Exactly. The shipping container didn't immediately fire the dock worker. It just standardized the boss.
It made the friction drop to zero.
Right. It made the friction of moving goods drop to near zero, which meant that suddenly a factory worker in Ohio was directly competing with a factory worker, halfway across the world.
Yes.
The local manufacturing premium didn't fall off a cliff overnight. It suffered this multi-decade deflationary bleed because the geographic moat was just totally removed.
That is a highly accurate parallel. The shipping container commoditized the transportation of physical goods.
Right.
And the text is arguing that AI is commoditizing the transportation and formatting of cognitive goods. And this raises an incredibly thorny question about professional identity for everyone listening. I mean, for the last 50 years, our society has defined success almost entirely by the acquisition of specialized cognitive skills.
Oh, 100%. You endure 4 years of university.
Maybe 3 years of law school.
Or some grueling computer science curriculum.
Right, to learn how to manipulate information or analyze data or draft complex logic.
And that education, it essentially inducted you into an elite class of laborers.
Exactly. So if that premium deflates, if the tide permanently recedes, so to speak, what happens to the identity of the worker?
Who are you if the thing you spent 10 years learning to do perfectly can be generated by a machine in literally 10 seconds?
It's an existential crisis.
It really is. If you are a knowledge worker, quote unquote, but the knowledge itself is suddenly cheap, does the whole concept of the white-collar class fracture?
I think we have to leave that as an open question for you, the listener, to evaluate against your own career path, because there's no easy answer there.
No, there isn't. But to figure out why that premium is deflating so rapidly in the first place, I feel like we first have to understand what exactly clients and corporations have been paying for all these years.
We need to look at the anatomy of a cognitive premium.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So the author goes to great lengths here to break down the composition of a white-collar wage.
And the core argument they make is fascinating. A cognitive worker's wage is not simply payment for the physical execution of labor.
Okay, what does that mean in practice?
Well, when a corporation pays a software engineer $180,000 a year, they are not paying for the physical act of typing code into an IDE.
Let's pause and define that for a second, just so everyone is on the same page. An IDE is an integrated development environment.
Right.
It's essentially this complex digital workbench where programmers write, test, and debug their software. It's their canvas.
That's a great way to put it. It's their canvas. But the typing on that canvas is just the mechanical execution. The $180,000 salary is actually payment for the invisible cognitive scaffolding beneath the typing.
The scaffolding. I like that.
Yeah, the employer is paying for the engineer's ability to architect a complex system that won't collapse under heavy user traffic. They are paying for the intuition required to debug a catastrophic failure at 3 a.m.
Which you really want them to be able to do.
Exactly. They are paying for the foresight to make high-stakes design trade-offs and this deep structural understanding of a million-line code base. The wage, fundamentally, is a payment for scarcity.
Payment for scarcity. The text actually uses the example of a lawyer charging $350 an hour, which perfectly illustrates this, I think.
It's the classic example.
Because when a client gets that bill, they aren't paying for the keystrokes it took to write the contract.
No, of course not.
They're paying for a massive, invisible architecture of trust.
Yes. Gosh.
They're paying for the lawyer's 3 years of law school. They're paying for the firm's ridiculously expensive subscriptions to gated case law databases.
The overhead is huge.
Massive overhead. And they are paying for the lawyer's highly trained ability to spot a tiny, obscure regulatory risk that would otherwise ruin the client's business.
And perhaps most importantly, they are paying for professional indemnity insurance.
Oh, yeah.
And the licensed accountability of a practitioner who can literally be disbarred if they get it wrong.
You hit on the critical phrase there, licensed accountability.
Yeah, the text gets deeply into this idea of institutional credibility.
Right.
Historically, trust has been incredibly expensive to manufacture and maintain. You needed the towering office building, the mahogany desk, the Ivy League degree on the wall, and an army of paralegals just to signal to the market that your cognitive output was trustworthy.
You had to look the part to charge the premium.
Exactly. The premium is the cost of maintaining that fortress of credibility.
But, reading this breakdown in the text, it forces a rather uncomfortable realization about how these professions actually operate.
In what sense?
Well, if we strip away all the prestige and we look strictly at the mechanics of scarcity, it honestly seems like white-collar cognitive workers have essentially been operating a cartel.
Oh, wow. That's a heavy word.
I mean, think about it. We talk about paying the lawyer $350 an hour for their sheer brilliance. But aren't we often just paying a toll to cross a license moat?
A walled garden.
Exactly, a walled garden made up of proprietary legal databases, dense jargon that is deliberately designed to be unreadable to the layman, and strict licensing boards that legally forbid the average person from even participating.
You can't just practice law on a whim.
Right. So if the wage is heavily dependent on artificially maintained scarcity, then a huge chunk of that premium isn't a reward for innate brilliance at all. It's just a monopoly on access.
That is a very sharp, very cynical critique of the professional managerial class. But it absolutely aligns with the structural vulnerabilities that the author exposes here.
It's all about who holds the keys.
Right. And whether the scarcity is natural, like a genuinely brilliant architectural mind, or artificial, like a strict bar exam limiting the supply of lawyers, the economic result has always been a high premium.
High premium, yeah.
But let's follow the author's logic into the open-ended implications of this, because this is where it gets crazy.
Okay, let's go there.
If a massive portion of a professional wage is fundamentally just payment for scarcity, what happens to human motivation when that scarcity is eradicated by technology?
Oh, man. That is the existential dread buried in this economic paper.
It really is.
If you remove the massive financial reward at the very end of this grueling, decade-long educational path, will human beings still pursue that deep expertise just for the love of the game?
That's the question.
Right. Does society suddenly find itself with a massive deficit of deep, foundational knowledge 20 years from now, simply because no one wanted to endure the rigorous training for a deflated, commoditized wage?
It alters the entire incentive structure of human capital. I mean, we do not have historical precedent for a society where the highest levels of cognitive processing are literally cheaper than the physical labor required to serve a cup of coffee.
Cheaper than a barista. That's wild.
We are truly exploring unmapped terrain here. But to understand the sheer velocity of this shift, we have to look at the battering ram that the text says is currently smashing through these walled gardens of expensive trust.
Right, the mechanism.
The author identifies the exact catalyst driving this deflation right now. It is a $2,000 server.
This is where the text transitions from high-level economic theory to sheer, undeniable mechanical reality.
It gets very tangible.
Very. The author introduces this specific piece of hardware running what they call an open-weight model. Now, we really need to clarify exactly what that means for you listening, because the economics of it dictate absolutely everything that follows.
It's the core of the issue.
So when we say open weight, we are talking about an artificial intelligence model where the underlying architecture, the billions of neural weights and parameters that make the AI actually smart, are freely available for anyone to download.
It is not locked away.
Exactly. It is not locked behind a paywall. It is not hidden on the proprietary servers of some massive tech giant charging you per query.
No API toll booth.
Right. It is free, open source intelligence that you can run locally on relatively cheap hardware.
And that distinction between closed proprietary models and open weight models is the absolute crux of the deflationary pressure.
Because of who controls the price.
Yes. If the intelligence is locked behind a corporate API, the tech giant controls the pricing. They can maintain an artificial premium just like the law firms did.
Right.
But once the weights are open, the intelligence becomes a public utility, like water or electricity. And the text explicitly details the current capabilities of this $2,000 local setup.
And the capabilities are staggering.
They state that this cheap server can draft a legal brief at 85% of the quality of a junior associate.
85%.
It can generate functional software code that is 90% correct, requiring only a senior engineer to review and tweak it.
Just tweak it.
It can instantly analyze a dense contract to flag risky liability clauses. It can ingest a 200-page regulatory filing and output a perfect executive summary.
Perfect.
It can extract complex financial entities from a completely disorganized invoice translated across multiple languages and format it into a standardized corporate report, all locally.
Okay, but let's play devil's advocate here. If the AI is only producing 85% or 90% quality, why is the market accepting it?
That's the million-dollar question.
Right. To figure that out, we have to look at how these models actually work and what clients were actually buying when they paid for the 100% human version.
Yes.
Like, why is a 200-page regulatory filing the absolute perfect target for this technology?
Because a 200-page regulatory filing is not a novel of original creative thought.
Right. It's not poetry.
No, it is a highly structured, highly predictable document built on decades of standardized boilerplate language. Large language models operate on statistical prediction. They excel at recognizing patterns in vast data sets and predicting the most logical sequence of words to follow.
So it's basically fancy autocomplete.
Extremely fancy, yes. But the point is, much of the cognitive work we have historically elevated as highly skilled is, in reality, incredibly sophisticated pattern matching.
Just pattern matching.
The junior associate reading that 200-page filing is basically just looking for deviations from standard clauses. The AI can do that instantaneously because it has ingested every standard clause ever written in human history.
It's seen it all before.
Exactly.
And those numbers, 85% and 90%, those are the magic numbers of the wedge. The author uses these numbers to introduce this concept called the routine 80%. And the text is very careful to clarify that the premium doesn't compress to zero across the entire spectrum of the job.
Right, it's not a total wipeout.
Exactly. The senior law partner still commands a massive premium for the top 15% of the job that is genuinely complex.
The human element.
Right, the nuanced client negotiations, the physical courtroom presence, the high-level strategic judgment. And the principal software engineer keeps their premium for the top 10% of deep architectural problems that require understanding the actual business logic, not just the syntax.
Read the rest of it.
But that routine 80%, the drafting, the summarizing, the basic code generation. The text argues that this is now a pure commodity.
And we really need to linger on the concept of the routine 80% because historically that 80% was the economic bedrock of the white-collar working class.
It was the foundation.
It was the training ground. It was the vast expanse of billable hours that kept towering downtown office buildings filled with young professionals.
Just churning through documents.
Right. And by turning that 80% into a commodity, the fundamental rules of the market change. As the author notes, commodities are always priced at their marginal cost of production.
Meaning the cost to produce one additional unit.
Exactly. If it costs a law firm $500 in human labor to draft the first brief, it costs another $500 to draft the second one. The marginal cost remains high.
It scales linearly.
Yes. But if the marginal cost of generating an 85% perfect legal brief via a local AI agent is literally a fraction of a cent in electricity,
Which it is.
the market will inevitably, relentlessly force the price of human labor doing that same task down toward that fraction of a cent.
It has to. But wait, in high-end professions like corporate law or, say, structural engineering, an 85% accuracy rate used to be considered completely failing.
Oh, you'd be laughed out of the right.
It was unacceptable. If a junior associate handed a partner a brief that was 85% right and 15% flawed or hallucinated, they would be fired. So let's look at this like the invention of the microwave in the context of a high-end Michelin star restaurant.
I love this analogy.
The microwave doesn't replace the executive chef's refined palate, right? Or their ability to invent a groundbreaking new flavor profile. That's the 15% premium.
The chef's genius is safe.
But it utterly commoditizes the physical act of reheating a side dish. The profound question the text asks is, does the end client actually care if the brief is only 85% as good, if the cost to generate it is $0, and the senior partner cleans up the last 15% anyway?
That is the exact tension the text isolates. And the history of disruptive technology strongly suggests that convenience and massive cost efficiency almost always defeat perfect quality for the vast majority of the market.
Good enough always wins.
Good enough and virtually free is an incredibly aggressive economic predator. It will devour perfect and expensive in almost every routine application. But we have to take this exploration a step further into economic theory. Because if cognitive work is priced at a marginal cost near zero, we immediately run into the Jevons paradox.
The Jevons paradox. Okay, I know we see this in energy markets, but explain how it applies to human thought here.
So William Stanley Jevons was a 19th century economist.
Okay.
And he observed that when technological progress increases the efficiency with which a resource is used, the overall rate of consumption of that resource actually rises rather than falls.
Counterintuitive, but okay.
Right. So making coal engines more efficient didn't reduce coal use.
It made coal so useful that we burned exponentially more of it.
Exactly. So if we apply the Jevons paradox to cognitive labor, what happens when the cost of a custom legal analysis drops from $5,000 to 5 cents?
Oh, man. Does the sheer volume of cognitive work just explode?
It might.
Do we experience a hyperinflation of cognitive output? If it's effectively free, maybe everyone involved in a minor fender bender gets a 200-page custom legal brief generated for their insurance claim.
Why not? It costs nothing.
Right. Maybe every mid-level manager at a huge corporation demands a daily, 50-page, highly synthesized report on their team's performance just because the cost to produce it is zero.
The demand becomes infinite.
It's wild to think about.
Yeah.
We honestly don't know if the volume of work will just endlessly expand to fill the void of cheaper production, or if corporations will simply shrink their total spending and pocket the difference.
It's an entirely unresolved macroeconomic question.
Totally open.
But regardless of whether the total volume of output expands or shrinks, the mathematical reality of these commoditized tasks has an immediate, localized impact on the actual human being sitting in the office right now.
The people at the mahogany desks.
Yes. The text transitions from the theory of the wedge to the actual physical restructuring of the workplace.
Yeah.
This is what the author calls the slope, not the cliff.
Right, the slope. So the author provides a very specific mathematical model of a hypothetical law firm to illustrate how this slope functions in reality.
It's a great model.
It really grounds it. It's a localized example, but it's meant to represent a macro trend across all cognitive industries. So the model works like this. Historically, a specific department in a firm might have 5 junior associates whose primary job is drafting routine briefs.
The drafter.
With the introduction of the open-weight AI wedge, that function gets fundamentally restructured. The firm no longer needs 5 humans drafting from scratch. Instead, they need 2 junior associates whose job has shifted entirely.
They are no longer drafters.
Exactly. They are now reviewers.
Yeah.
Auditing the AI-generated drafts for that remaining 15% of errors.
So the headcount in that specific function drops by 60%. 3 people are simply gone from the equation.
Vanished.
Now, the text notes a very crucial nuance here. The remaining 2 junior associates might actually receive a modest raise.
A raise.
Yeah, because they now considered AI augmented. Technically, they are vastly more productive because they are managing the output of a machine that is doing the foundational work of 3 departed humans.
Okay, sure.
However, the critical macro math is devastating. The total labor income in that department, meaning the aggregate amount of money the firm is paying out to human beings to accomplish that set of tasks, drops by 50 to 60%.
I have to pause on this because it feels deeply counterintuitive and, frankly, infuriating from the perspective of the worker.
Oh, absolutely.
If those 2 remaining junior associates are now reviewing and finalizing the sheer volume of output that used to take 5 highly educated people to do.
They're doing the work of 5 people.
Right. If they are technically producing 250% of their previous output, why is the market only giving them a modest raise?
It doesn't seem fair.
It doesn't. If we look at a physical labor parallel, it feels like working on a factory assembly line where management suddenly speeds up the conveyor belt by 300%. They hand you a robotic arm to help you keep up with the insane new pace, but your paycheck only goes up by 5%.
And where does the rest of the money go?
Exactly. The text says the capital owner captures the productivity surplus. The law firm partner, the tech shareholder, the corporate board. The end consumer might see slightly lower prices, but the displaced workers get 0. And the remaining workers get pennies on the dollar for their vastly increased output.
Yep.
Why does the labor market allow the capital owner to capture almost all of that massive surplus?
It exposes a brutal, fundamental dynamic of labor economics. The surplus is captured entirely by capital because the massive increase in productivity did not originate from the workers' innate scarce human skills improving.
It came from the tool.
Exactly. It came from the tool, and the tool is owned or licensed by the firm. The worker isn't 300% smarter.
Right.
The worker didn't suddenly learn to type 300% faster. The $2,000 server is doing the heavy lifting. Therefore, the worker has absolutely no leverage to demand a 300% raise.
Because they're replaceable.
Completely. If they march into the partner's office and demand it, the firm can easily replace them with any other worker willing to sit and review AI output for a modest wage. The skill of reviewing an AI draft is infinitely less scarce than the skill of drafting a complex brief from scratch from your own memory.
Yeah, I see. The leverage evaporates because the specific human skill required is no longer scarce. It goes right back to the anatomy of the premium we talked about.
Yes, the walled garden has been breached.
The barrier to entry for the remaining role is drastically lowered. Anyone can be a reviewer.
Precisely. But this immediate pursuit of efficiency creates a massive looming blind spot. It is perhaps the most dangerous open question in the entire source text.
Let's hear it.
If the junior roles, The drafting roles, the thousands of hours of routine 80% work are eliminated. How does any industry train the senior experts of tomorrow?
Oh, wow. The pipeline completely collapses.
Yes. Historically, spending 5 years agonizing over blank pages, drafting briefs from scratch, making painful mistakes, and having them redlined by a senior partner, that was the crucible.
That's how you learn.
Exactly. That friction was exactly what forged a senior partner's elite 15% judgment. So if the reviewers of tomorrow only ever check AI-generated work and never spend years wrestling with the foundational logic themselves, will they even possess the deep intuitive knowledge required to spot the AI's most subtle, dangerous mistakes?
It's like removing the minor leagues from baseball entirely, having young players only ever watch video simulations of games, and then expecting to still have all-star caliber players in the major leagues 10 years from now.
That's a perfect analogy.
If nobody is forced to learn the grueling fundamentals, who possesses the expertise to actually lead the firm?
Nobody.
Does the entire cognitive scaffolding of the profession eventually rot from the inside out because the training ground was commoditized out of existence?
It's a huge systemic risk.
You don't have the answer to that. We're leaving that massive structural vulnerability as an open question for you to consider about your own industry.
Definitely think about that pipeline in your own field.
Yeah. And if you were listening to this and thinking, well, this pipeline problem is a theoretical issue for the 2030s, surely we have time to adapt. The text aggressively argues otherwise.
The timeline is now.
Right. The author claims this isn't a 10-year projection. It's happening in real time right now. And the evidence is buried in this whole section on decoding corporate jargon.
The author is emphatic regarding the timeline. The text states, it's happening now, not in 10 years, not in 20, now.
And now.
And the evidence they point to isn't found in massive, headline-grabbing layoffs. That goes back to our earlier discussion about the cliff versus the slope.
Right, layoffs are the cliff.
A massive layoff is a cliff. It makes the front page of the financial papers.
Yeah.
But the evidence for the slope is hidden in mundane hiring data and very specific, carefully worded corporate restructuring announcements.
You really have to read between the lines.
Yes, the text lists several phrases that we need to learn to identify as massive red flags. They highlight corporate earnings calls where executives say things like, we're not replacing headcount, we're not backfilling attrition.
Or they say, we are adjusting our hiring mix. Fewer junior developers and more senior developers who can leverage AI.
Right.
The text also highlights the phrase, we are reducing our external consulting spend by 30% because we're bringing those capabilities in-house with AI, and we are choosing not to renew our BPO contracts.
Let's translate this corporate speak, starting with BPO.
Yeah, please.
That stands for Business Process Outsourcing. These are the massive offshore call centers, the data entry hubs, the sprawling complexes in developing nations that handle the routine back-end administrative work of Western corporations.
The absolute epicenter of the routine, 80%.
And they are the first massive dominoes to fall. Why would a multinational bank pay a BPO firm thousands of dollars a month per seat for offshore analysts to synthesize market data when their internal strategy team can run a local, open-weight language model to generate the exact same synthesis instantaneously for the cost of electricity?
They wouldn't.
No. The external vendors whose entire business model relies on arbitraging human cognitive labor for routine tasks are incredibly vulnerable to immediate catastrophic compression.
Makes total sense.
But the more insidious phrase the author highlights is attrition backfilling.
So, if the work still needs to get done, how does a massive corporation justify not replacing a person who leaves?
By quietly redistributing that person's workload to the remaining AI-augmented staff.
Wow.
Not backfilling attrition is perhaps the most elegant, frictionless way a corporation can shrink its workforce without triggering an internal panic or a massive PR nightmare.
Nobody gets fired.
Exactly. When an employee naturally leaves a company, they retire, they take a job at a competitor, they move cities, the company simply deletes their empty chair.
Just gone.
They don't fire anyone, there are no severance packages to pay, there are no plummeting morale metrics among the survivors who are terrified they are next. The corporation just quietly closes the open requisition in AR software.
And over time.
Over a period of 3 or 4 years, a department that historically required 50 people quietly naturally dwindles to a department of 35.
It is the ultimate stealth deflation.
It truly is.
Psychologically, it's like a corporate game of musical chairs, but the rules have changed completely.
How so?
Instead of the music stopping and someone aggressively pulling a chair away while everyone fights desperately for a seat, the chairs are just slowly, silently dissolving into thin air while the music keeps playing.
Dissolving chairs.
Yeah. You don't even realize there are fewer seats in the room until you finally stand up to change jobs and find nothing but empty space.
That visual captures the structural evaporation perfectly. It isn't a violent event. It's an ambient disappearance of opportunity.
Ambient disappearance.
And this leads us to a deeply unsettling exploration of the future labor market. If every large enterprise on the globe adopts this identical do more with less language simultaneously...
Which they're all trying to do.
Right. If every Fortune 500 company stops backfilling attrition and stops hiring junior developers on the exact same timeline, what happens to the entry-level job market?
Is the very concept of an entry-level job in cognitive white-collar fields permanently dead?
It is a profound structural possibility we have to entertain. If the routine 80%, the data entry, the basic drafting, the junior research, is fully absorbed by the $2,000 local server, there is no entry level left to offer a human being.
The bridge is gone.
You are either a highly seasoned senior expert capable of leveraging AI to manage massive complex outputs, or you are outside the system entirely with no mechanism to ever gain the experience required to become senior.
It is a terrifying paradox for anyone currently in university.
Absolutely terrifying.
And if you are hoping that this trend will hit some natural technological plateau, like that LLMs will hit a wall and the compression will just ease up, the author dedicates the final section of the text to explaining why the floor is actually going to drop out even faster.
Yes, the accelerants.
Right. We are moving into the final section of our deep dive. Accelerants and the global race to the bottom.
So the text outlines a confluence of macroeconomic and technological forces that are explicitly driving this acceleration. First, the author mentions something called priority 2.
Okay, priority 2.
Now, we must explicitly note for you, the listener, that the text leaves this term entirely unexplained.
Completely unexplained.
The author simply states that the compression is accelerating because of priority 2, and then abruptly moves on to the next point, leaving this massive, fascinating void in the center of the argument.
It is such a strange, deliberate omission. Like, what on earth could priority 2 be?
We can only guess.
Is it a classified government objective regarding national AI supremacy? Is it a secret, synchronized mandate among the boards of major tech conglomerates to prioritize labor replacement above all else?
Or maybe a known phase of AI development.
Right, like the shift from passive language models to fully autonomous, self-directing agents that don't even need a human reviewer. The author just drops this breadcrumb and walks away, leaving us to guess at the invisible forces driving the market.
Whether it is a genuine insider reference or just a brilliant rhetorical device to imply a deeper systemic inevitability, it underscores the feeling of forces operating way beyond the control of the average worker.
Totally out of our hands.
But even if we entirely ignore the mystery of priority 2, the other accelerants the text lists are concrete, verifiable, and frankly devastating to the cognitive premium.
Like what?
The author points out that open-weight models are, at their core, free to acquire. They point out that incredibly well-funded Eastern AI labs are relentlessly, aggressively driving down the cost curve of the physical compute required to run these models.
Making it cheaper and cheaper.
And they note that the threshold of good enough, that 85% acceptable quality we debated, is being crossed in sector after sector, from legal to coding to finance, simultaneously.
The implication of those models being free is the absolute core of this final section, I think. Because the text points out that because open-weight models can be downloaded by literally anyone with an internet connection, a solo freelancer in a developing nation now has access to the exact same cognitive tools as the largest Western enterprises.
Let's analyze the profound geographic and scale implications of this, because it threatens to flip a century of Western economic dominance entirely on its head.
I mean, historically, a massive Western enterprise won in the global market because it possessed massive scale, right?
Exactly. It had armies of Ivy League-educated analysts. It had deep proprietary data sets. It had endless capital to throw at complex problems.
It essentially held a monopoly on cognitive firepower.
Now, according to the mechanics laid out in the text, a single freelancer sitting in a low-cost region, armed with a free open-weight model on a $2,000 laptop, can instantly access the exact same level of cognitive firepower.
It's the shipping container analogy all over again, but for human intelligence.
It really is.
The containers standardize the movement of physical labor, destroying the local manufacturing premium. And the open weight model standardizes the production of cognitive labor, destroying the Western white-collar premium. The playing field isn't just leveled, it is fundamentally paved over.
Yes, and when the cognitive output itself, the brief, the code, the report, is perfectly commoditized, and the tools to generate it are universally accessible to everyone on Earth, the only remaining variable in the corporate ledger is the cost of the human labor required to prompt the system and review the output.
The only variable left.
As the text flatly and ruthlessly states, in a commodity market, the lower-cost producer wins.
It's a bizarre, almost paradoxical global arms race. Instead of competing nations spending trillions of dollars in secret to develop the ultimate weapon, the absolute most advanced paradigm-shifting technology in human history is just being open-sourced and handed out for free on the digital street corner to anyone who wants it.
It's unprecedented.
And if every single participant in the global market has the exact same ultimate weapon, you can no longer win by having better technology. You can only win by being the person willing to accept the lowest rations.
The cheapest labor.
Right. Becomes a pure race at the bottom to see who can survive on the most heavily deflated wage.
It is a stark, mathematically cold reflection of the text's conclusion, and it forces us to ask the ultimate question. What is the true end state of a pure commodity market for human thought?
What does that even look like?
Well, if everyone globally has a near genius level AI on their laptop, does a highly educated Western cognitive worker possess any innate defensible advantage left?
Probably not.
If the final output is entirely indistinguishable, why would a multinational company ever pay a premium for an AI reviewer sitting in an expensive high-rise in New York when they can pay a fraction of that cost to an equally competent AI reviewer sitting in a developing economy?
Does the globalization of cognitive work finally achieve perfect, ruthless, frictionless efficiency?
That's the trajectory.
We don't have the answers to these massive macroeconomic questions. And frankly, the text doesn't offer any comfortable off-ramps or policy solutions either. It simply points a flashlight down the trajectory of the slope and shows us just how steep the drop really is.
Which brings us to the necessity of synthesizing everything we've unpacked today. We have covered a tremendous amount of incredibly dense structural ground.
We really have. So let's pull this sprawling exploration together. If there is one core insight you take away from this deep dive, it is this. The danger isn't the cinematic sudden loss of your job.
It's not the cliff.
It is the gradual, silent evaporation of the premium on your human cognition. It is the receding tide stranding the boats. It is your wage inexorably following the loss of your scarcity, right down to the marginal cost of electricity.
Well said.
Our goal today was to open up this text, look at the uncomfortable angles, and not close the book with false assurances. We wanted to give you the framework to ask much sharper, better questions about the reality of your own professional life.
And on that note, I strongly encourage you to conduct a ruthless audit of your own work week. Tomorrow morning, look closely at your daily tasks.
Really look at them.
Be brutally honest with yourself about the anatomy of your own premium. Which of your tasks are truly scarce? Which ones require deep, unsimulatable human judgment, high-stakes emotional relationship building, or a highly specific physical world presence?
The 15%.
Right. And which of your tasks belong to that routine 80%? Which of your daily outputs are simply digesting information, formatting it, and moving it from one digital bucket to another?
Moving data around.
Because if the mechanics of this text are correct, those are the tasks that are silently becoming commodities as we speak.
Audit your week. Find out where your true scarcity lies. That's such a practical, if slightly terrifying piece of advice to walk away with. Now, before we sign off, we promised you a final provocative thought.
We did.
Something that builds on the fundamental mechanics of the text, but takes it in a completely different direction that we haven't even touched on yet.
Here is a brand new angle for you to ponder regarding the future of scarcity. If this text is entirely correct, if the premium on cognitive labor, on the mere act of knowing things and processing information, is relentlessly driven to zero by universally available AI, what happens to the broader structure of the economy?
That's the big unknown.
Will we see a massive, completely unexpected economic premium return to physical labor?
Physical labor.
Yes, to manual craftsmanship, to jobs that require complex, unpredictable physical manipulation of the real world, or to roles centered on deep, messy human empathy.
Oh man, that is the ultimate historical irony. The smartest people in the room accidentally automate themselves out of the premium, while the people working with their hands suddenly hold all the leverage.
Exactly. If every single person in the world can generate a perfect, flawless, 200-page legal brief for absolutely free, maybe the most valuable, most highly compensated person in society will no longer be the lawyer who went to Harvard.
Who will be?
Maybe it will be the person who knows how to fix the complex plumbing in the massive, cooling, liquid-filled server farm that houses the AI. Because no matter how smart the open-weight model gets, a language model cannot turn a wrench.
The plumber in the server farm. The revenge of the physical world. That is an absolutely brilliant image to end on. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning your sources, keep examining your own assumptions, and keep a very close eye on that receding tide. We'll leave you to wonder about the mystery of Priority 2 and what exactly comes next. Until next time.